Vikings, let's win this game.
Vikings Nation, buckle up, the rumor mill just kicked into overdrive. Word behind closed doors says this team is lining up a $90 million move for an all-pro wide receiver. That alone would shake the building, but it keeps rolling. There is also real chatter about adding a veteran to command the huddle. Right in the middle of that storm, a franchise legend has already drawn a line in the sand about certain quarterback names. And as if that was not enough, there is a draft scenario floating around that could tilt the entire blueprint. The final piece of this puzzle might end up steering the next era of this franchise. Before we dive headfirst into it, let me ask you something real quick. If you rock with this channel, hit that button and lock yourself in with us. It costs you nothing, and it fuels this whole Vikings corner of the internet. And I want your voice in the mix, so jump into the comments and tell me where you stand. This is our roundtable, not a one-man show. Out of nowhere, the receiver market cracked open like a frozen lake in April. A true game breaker is suddenly free to put pen to paper, and when you connect that to what he once said about Minnesota, it is impossible not to let your imagination run. We are talking about Tyreek Hill. Yes, that Tyreek Hill, the one who has scorched defenses everywhere he has lined up. Years ago, he made it clear he grew up loving the Vikings, and he did not say it like a guy reading off a cue card. He talked about wearing purple and gold like it was a childhood vision burned into his brain. So now he is available, and we already have a superstar on the other side. How do you not picture it? But slow down, because this is not a video game. He is coming off a serious knee injury, a dislocation plus a torn ligament, and surgery followed right away. He and his agent have said the target is to be ready next season. But a timeline on paper and Sundays in the fall are two different worlds. That is why a short-term prove-it contract makes sense before any long-term commitment. Still, imagine Tyreek lined up opposite Justin Jefferson. One side pure lightning, the other side surgical precision. Defensive coordinators would not sleep the week they play us. Then the quarterback question crashes in. We are still living in that uncertainty about who stabilizes this thing and how to protect J.J. McCarthy's growth. A move like Hill changes gravity. Veterans pay attention. The tempo sharpens. Confidence rises. That ripple can help a young quarterback too. And then comes the fork in the road. What happens to Jordan Addison? Some fans will instantly talk trade, stack up draft picks, and patch another hole. Others will say moving a young weapon is madness. I sit in between. Addison has talent, no doubt, but the off-field history is part of the equation. Money and patience are not unlimited, and you cannot ignore the off-field allegations tied to Hill either. Those are serious, and the front office has to examine every angle. This is the Vikings, not some lawless frontier. Winning matters, but how you win matters too. Bottom line for me, if the medical reports check out and the locker room fit is right, this is a rare opportunity to turn a strong offense into a weekly horror show for opponents. And you only get this kind of Vikings fan read right here, because we are not just fantasizing, we are balancing risk and reward like people who want to defend the North back where it belongs. Tell me straight up in the comments, would you pull the trigger with all these layers in play? Stay with me, because the last one today will split this fan base clean in half. Let us roll into the next topic, because it goes straight at the quarterback blueprint and it might catch some of you off guard. At first glance, this next piece feels almost low volume, but when you stack it next to what went down in 2025, it becomes a pivot point. The Vikings have one glaring offseason assignment: solve quarterback. Not just slap a name on it, but find the right profile so the year does not unravel again. And now there is a suggestion gaining steam that is not flashy at all. No fireworks, no headline superstar. The name is Jake Browning. He came out of Cincinnati, and in 2025 he started as Joe Burrow's backup. When Burrow went down in week 2 with a foot issue, Browning stepped in and grabbed the controls. There were moments he ran that offense with poise. An early win gave that locker room real belief, but the ride got bumpy. He played in 5 games, threw 6 touchdowns, and also had 8 interceptions. Too many risky throws, too many late reads, the kind of decisions that make you shake your head. Still, here is what stands out to me. Even when it slipped, he did not sulk. No public complaints, no finger pointing. Cincinnati brought in Joe Flacco, and Browning slid down to emergency status, and he stayed ready. That tells you about professionalism. A competitive team needs a backup who can keep the structure standing when pressure hits. Why Minnesota? Because we saw how fragile things can get in 2025. The team finished 9-8, third in the NFC North. Looks decent in the standings, but the start was a mess, 4-8 out of the gate. The offense stalled, bad choices piled up, and once you start chasing the season, it feels like running on a treadmill that never stops. Nobody wants to relive that. so I understand the thought. Add a veteran who does not walk in like he owns the place, but is not just a practice arm either. Someone who sharpens practice, fixes details, and can steal a game if called upon, while allowing J.J. McCarthy to develop without panic breathing down his neck. Browning fits that mold. He has real snaps under pressure. He has seen the plan crumble and had to respond, and the contract situation keeps it interesting. Heading into 2026, he is a restricted free agent, so it hinges on what the Bengals do with a tender. If that door stays ajar, another team can step in. With Minnesota's roster and quarterback need, it is logical to watch. I know it does not light up social media, but let me say this clearly. Championships are built with smart pieces, not just splashy names. A steady backup shifts the mood in the building. It adjusts the play calling. It gives peace of mind to the fan who lives and breathes Vikings football every single day. Now imagine that happening while the front office still searches for something stronger at the top. That is when the chess match really begins, and it leads right into the next debate, because the league is already looking at our young quarterback and wondering how long the leash should be. This is where the temperature rises. Up until now, we have been talking about additions and adjustments, but this one hits the core of the franchise. J.J. McCarthy is at the center of it. After only about 10 starts in 2025, national voices are already questioning whether Minnesota should pivot fast. Derek Klassen at The Athletic said he does not find the situation all that compelling, and if he were the Vikings, he would try to get out of it quickly. Quickly. That word alone makes you pause. Moving on from a quarterback that early sounds wild. Then Robert Mays, on that same show, added that he does not have much faith in what he has seen so far, while also admitting that bailing on a young passer that soon is extreme. But he emphasized something important. The Vikings cannot afford to waste another season. That is the weight of it. In 2025, they missed the playoffs. Again. You look at the roster and see weapons on offense, a defense that battles, and still the center never settles. Meanwhile, Sam Darnold is celebrating elsewhere with a trophy. That one stings deep. I will be honest, McCarthy showed flashes. Some throws into tight windows were beautiful, plays that made you leap off the couch, but there were also forced interceptions, slow reads, and moments where the ball did not reach the guys who need it most. When Justin Jefferson finishes a full season below his usual production level, alarms go off. So the debate becomes ruthless. Do you add only a safety net quarterback? Do you bring in someone who can truly push for the job? Or do you sign a clear-cut starter and remove all ambiguity? Every option sends a signal to the locker room and to McCarthy himself. Then John Randall stepped into the spotlight and did not hold back. He made it clear he does not want certain veterans like Derek Carr or Kirk Cousins coming back, and he wants more than someone who simply steers the offense. When a Hall of Famer speaks, people listen. I am torn. Cutting ties too early can haunt you, but clinging out of pride can cost another competitive year. And you only get this raw Vikings fan read right here from people who lives and breathes Vikings football, because we are thinking about what happens in January, not just how things look in September. So tell me, do you give McCarthy a full season to own it, or do you throw real competition into camp immediately? Drop your thoughts below, because the next story raises the stakes even higher with a strong opinion from someone who helped define this franchise. There is a hard truth in this next piece, and it is wrapped in nostalgia. We remember big throws, playoff pushes, leadership in the huddle, but the Vikings cannot survive on old highlights. John Randall, a true legend, stepped in and said plainly he does not want Kirk Cousins back. He also pushed back on the Derek Carr idea, especially with all the retirement and unretirement noise around him. For Randall, that path does not lead to where this fan base wants to go, and he touched the nerve we all feel. Postseason results. We have walked that road before, plenty of solid seasons, but when January shows up, the ceiling stays put. He was not disrespecting anyone, he was raising the bar. Looking at it coldly, you understand why those names keep resurfacing. McCarthy's first year as a starter had mistakes, fumbles, interceptions, and games where the offense felt stuck in mud. The league's reflex is always to call a veteran, but Randall's point is that not every veteran is an upgrade. Some just park you in the middle of the standings. That 9-8 purgatory. Fans are tired of that. I do not carry anger toward Cousins. I carry exhaustion. Exhaustion from seeing a talented roster feel one notch short when it mattered. With Carr, I see a similar gamble. He might steady things on certain Sundays, maybe prevent collapse, but how far does that actually take you? Before you commit money and direction, you have to answer that honestly. So the lanes are clear. Either fully invest in McCarthy's growth with the right mentor-type presence, or bring in competition with a higher ceiling and real playmaking ability. You cannot sign a familiar name just to quiet the noise. It has to align with the vision, And remember, when a Hall of Famer talks, the locker room hears it, the fan base hears it, the front office feels it. If you go against that public stance, you better be fully convinced. As someone who has watched decades of this ride, I want to see courage. Courage is not just chasing headlines, it is committing to a path even if it rattles people for a week, which leads straight to the next layer. What if the answer is not on the roster or in free agency, but in the draft again? Picture this debate happening over wings and beers in Minneapolis, because that is the vibe. This is not just about selecting a player, it is about acknowledging that the clock might already be ticking at quarterback. A mock draft floated the idea of Minnesota targeting Carson Beck. The logic was interesting. Instead of forcing a quarterback at the very top of a class that does not feel elite, they would look at that middle tier, a prospect with a wide range of outcomes. Maybe he becomes a long-term steady backup. Maybe he develops if placed in the right situation. Beck would be a calculated gamble, not a savior walking in with a cape. And I understand the reasoning. The roster has talent. The defense competes. The offense has weapons. But without stability under center, everything feels unstable. We saw that in 2025, 9-8 on paper, but emotionally it felt like riding a roller coaster that never leveled out. The key point is this. The Vikings chose to move forward with J.J. McCarthy and let other paths close. If that does not stabilize quickly, they need a contingency plan. I still believe McCarthy's ceiling is higher than Beck's. When McCarthy is on, he looks capable of taking over a big moment. Beck does not carry that presence yet, but McCarthy struggled with consistency, and consistency is the currency of this league. There were weeks he looked sharp, and weeks he looked overwhelmed. With Justin Jefferson on this roster, that inconsistency cannot linger. Watching Jefferson finish a season below his usual standard is not acceptable. The scouting summary on Beck says he performs better when the pocket is clean and pressure is managed. Minnesota can provide that if the offensive line holds up and the scheme stays disciplined. At the very least, he becomes insurance so the team is not scrambling if McCarthy stumbles again. That is pragmatism, maybe even fear of repeating the same script. But drafting a quarterback, even outside the first round, sends a message. It says, we believe in you, but we are hedging. That affects the locker room, confidence, and the narrative of the season. So the real question is simple. Do the Vikings want genuine competition or just a safety net? I appreciate having a plan B. I have seen too many seasons collapse without one. But if you live leaning on plan B, you rarely grow into a true plan A. That is how teams drift into mediocrity. And that is why this conversation carries weight, because it is about what the franchise truly believes about its future. When you stack all of this together, the picture becomes crystal clear. The Tyreek Hill possibility is about swinging for the fences with a $90 million bet. The Jake Browning discussion proves the front office knows it cannot replay 2025. The pressure around J.J. McCarthy is already echoing nationally, and that will not vanish after one sharp practice. John Randall's stance reminds everyone that old comfort does not equal playoff success. And when a mock draft brings Carson Beck into the frame, it signals the plan has to be airtight. To me, the Vikings are standing at a fork in the road. Either they push forward boldly, or they keep pacing in circles. I am finished with circles. Now I want to hear from you. Jump into the comments and tell me what you would do this offseason if you were calling the shots. No fear, no politics, just pure football conviction. Stay tuned. SKOL Vikings. Let's go.